It's Christina from Studio SE, and I am going to show you the difference between shallow versus deep history pseudostates. So if you see on my screen here, this is an example of a state machine diagram, and I'll explain to you a little bit how it's going to work. So this is kind of the start of a model for the propulsion subsystem for a search and rescue unmanned aerial vehicle. And so what I'm showing here is just, the states. So first we're off, then we're turning on, there's error handling, and then there's where we're controlling thrust. And we have a few different states in here. We have idling, we have climbing, cruising, and descending. So how this works then is we're basically, once you start up, you turn on, it's going to perform its initial checks. If it's okay, it's going to go into this controlling thrust state, which it'll first enter idling. And then there are a few different value properties that it's going to be assessing here. We have things like the current altitude, we have the target altitude. So if the current altitude is less than the target altitude, it's going to start climbing. If the current altitude is greater than the target altitude, it's going to be descending. When these two equal each other, it's going to be in this cruising state. We also have some things which we won't necessarily go into, but it'll also be evaluating whether or not the waypoint has been achieved and doing some things versus that. But what we're going to be looking at really for this particular example is some of these like nested states. So when we're in the cruising state, we have three different states we could be in. We could be either in a steady cruise, energy saving mode, or like a boost mode. And that's going to be evaluating this value property cruise type, which is defined by an enumeration. And so we have some enumerational literals like steady cruise, energy saving, and boost mode. So that's going to determine whether or which state we're going to be in when we're cruising. So what I want to show you then is what happens if a failure is detected. So we see here, if we're in controlling thrust and a failure is detected, we're going to go into this error handling state. Now, I'm not showing you everything in the error handling state right now. Just know we're not just going to be, crashing into the ground or anything like that. There's going to be control behind it. But we're going to, for the purposes of this example, we're going to move out of this controlling thrust state into this error handling state. And what I haven't shown yet, and which I will show you, is then once the failure is resolved, we're going to move back into the controlling thrust state. But how do we know which substate we move into? Well, that's how we can use the deep history and shallow history. Now, shallow history is basically going to just look at that top level. So we'll do that right now. Let's choose shallow history and put that into our controlling thrust state. And we can do a transition from error handling to this shallow history. And we'll just say I have a signal, failures resolved. So what shallow history is going to do is it's going to look at this, first level of state. So it's going to look at idling, descending, climbing, and cruising, and determining which one do I go back into. If we exit, if a failure is detected when we're cruising, maybe we're in the steady cruise mode in this cruising state, a failure is detected. When that failure is resolved, our shallow history is going to know, hey, I was in this cruising state, I'm going to go straight back into cruising, and then I'm going to have to evaluate these guards to determine if I was in steady cruise, energy saving, or boost mode. So we'll see that right now. Let's go ahead and run this. We just do some checks. I'm going to say that the start is okay. Let's see. Okay. I'll slow this down a little bit. So we'll power it on, performed initial checks. Okay, we're in idling. Let's say that our target altitude, we'll just make this short, is 24 meters. So we're going into climbing. When we reach the target altitude, we're going into cruising. And I had this default, let's see, this default value of steady cruise for the cruise type. So we're in this steady cruise state within cruising. Okay, well now if a failure is detected, we'll say failure is detected, we go into air handling, we exit this controlling thrust state, and then when our failure is resolved, we go straight back into cruising, we evaluated the guard conditions, and went back into steady cruise. Okay, so that's how the shallow history works. But what if I don't want to have to evaluate these guards again, or maybe go through some other states that I might have had set up to get to this steady cruise? I just want to go straight back into steady cruise. Well, we can use the deep history pseudostate to do that. Our deep history state is going to go below that first level of states to look at what's that next level that I was in. So let's actually replace this. I'm going to make this deep history, and we'll make our transition again. Add our signal, and we'll redo, let's see, I'm going to go, oops, here. Let's just say that this is, we'll do boost mode, how about that? Startup is going to be okay. We'll start, power on. Let's say, sure, let's slow this down a tad. Oh, let's just make this 32 right now. Okay. So you see our current altitude is increasing there. We'll go into cruising. Oh, we got to do a little bit work. There we go. Okay. So now we're in boost mode. Let's slow this down just a little bit more. Okay. Well, now we're going to say we have detected a failure. We're in our error handling. Now with the deep history, when I select the failure resolved signal, we're going to see that we are going to bypass this junction, and we don't have to evaluate these value properties again, and know that, you know, our default value or our value for this time is boost mode. So we're not going to go about and evaluate these again. We're just going to remember with deep history that we were in boost mode already. So now we're going to say failure resolved. You'll see we move back into controlling, and we just bypassed this initial node, this junction node, and this transition, and went directly back into boost mode. Let's do that one more time in case you missed it. Failure detected. I'll slow this down just a tad. Failure resolved. Straight into boost mode. We did not have to go through any of those other transitions, or if I had other states. So that's the difference between shallow history and deep history. Shallow just looks at, you know, that first level of states, and deep history goes in and understands, you know, where exactly were you in this process. Hopefully that was helpful. And I have another example that I will post in the next few weeks for this. Thanks again.